Hello, my name is Dale Durdorf, and I'm your facilitator and instructor for MSE 608B. Tonight, what we would like to talk to you about is a new concept for our Week 1 lecture on leaderful leadership. Leaderful leadership is a new concept for leadership based upon how we can get everyone the opportunity to step forward at a certain point and be the leader, and then understand when you can step back. So the premise that we're going to walk you through is based upon a philosophy that a gentleman named Rilken has put together called Leaderful Leadership. And he's got a great, I'll call it white paper out here for us that I've got illustrated on the screen also. When the leaders are we the leaders in order to form a leaderful organization. Please look that up. Feel free to pull up this book on leaderful leadership. There's a lot of information out on the web on it, and then there is a field book also on leaderful leadership. So let's start talking about what that really means when we start talking about leaderful leadership. So what we want to do is we want to articulate or describe to you two different situations. One is going to be what we refer to as a conventional leadership type of environment. And then we're going to compare that against what we refer to as the leaderful. So we have a tenet of leaderful practice versus a traditional model of leadership that we've developed for you. And you can see that in a traditional or conventional leadership environment, people are serial. We work with individuals being the powerful leader, and it's a very controlling environment, and it's very dispassionate. Those are the four characteristics of what we refer to as a conventional leadership environment. And then we're going to balance that against this new philosophy we're bringing to you on leaderful leadership, and that is based upon 4 C's. The first one being that we're concurrent. The second one being that we're collective. The third one being that we're collaborative, and the fourth one that we're compassionate. And we're going to explore each one of these sections. We're going to open this up for you, and we're really going to pull at this leadership model and make sure that you fully understand it, because by the time we're done with this, I'm going to ask you 2 questions. One is, look in the mirror and tell me, are you a leaderful leader? And the second question I'm going to ask you is, what will it take you to become a leaderful leader? Because that's where we want you to be. That's the goal of this presentation. So let's just jump into the material on conventional leadership. Leadership in a conventional or a traditional environment is serial. There's only one leader. It's the boss. It's the guy at the top. Everybody points to him and says, that's the leader. And there's nothing wrong with a conventional or a traditional leadership environment. It is necessary many times, depending on the type of environment you're in. But we're talking about a leadership position in a very high-tech environment. And a high-tech environment has a lot of engineers, scientists, technology-based people that are there that have extremely good wisdom that needs to be pulled out at a certain point in time. But in this environment, the leader is very dictatorial. The leadership, when we say is serial, it's always in a position of leadership. That person is always in control, and those are key words: control and that leadership position. They never give that leadership position up. They don't delegate. They don't offer that up to anyone else, and they don't share power. Let's go into also the next piece of it, where we talked about the leadership is individual. That single solitary person signifies that leadership role. That traditional environment, that environment of leadership where you point to the top, it would weaken or confuse leadership in this type of environment, this bureaucratic environment, to talk about having more than just one leader. There's always that single person, and you would never share that leadership role because there wouldn't be a concrete or final person to make those decisions, because decisions need to be made in that autocratic type of environment. Now, the next piece we're going to talk about, leadership is controlling. Okay? And in this environment, there's a level of control that leader has. You do what I say. You need to go do this activity now. The plan is put together by a single person, and that person is the leader, and we believe that that leader can control this environment and get us moving in the right direction. We have to have that type of environment. And you'll find that there are certain places where this works very, very well. The coordination of all the functions that are happening are controlled by that leader. There is no real subordinate role other than to just follow what I tell you to do. And then leaders may choose to share their deepest beliefs, but only with their closest friends. So they don't share that with the organization. I don't care. You don't care what I think. Just do what I do. Do what I tell you to do. That is that conventional leadership model, that controlling leadership model. And then the final piece of it is, from a conventional leadership is dispassionate. And by that it means I look at people as being an object. When I say, people are my strongest asset, people are my strongest resource. That's an example of a dispassionate leader, because an asset is a business term for something that can be traded, something that you can substitute out, something that you can increase. There's a mathematical formula for it. It's very, very unpeople friendly. You don't look at people as being something that is anything other than something that I can swap around to get what I need to do. You have what we refer to here as, the tough decisions for the team. Those are made in a very dispassionate way. So if there's somebody better for a spot, we move this other person over. It doesn't matter about trying to grow that other person, or the learning, or the type of environment where we care about if someone has something happening to them in their personal life. That's their personal life. We don't care about that. We don't worry about that. We're faced with, the authority, the source of leadership that comes in this dispassionate way in the conventional leadership model. So when we talk about that from a summary standpoint, you can see that that conventional leadership is very dependent upon a single person who maintains control or power over the team or the group. That is one of the major tenets of it. The single leader is responsible for making all of the decisions. They make all of them, and they direct the efforts of the team or the group. And that this philosophy of power and control is something that is not shared. It's something that they hold on to, and they think that they are in control. They have the power. And this leaders always consider the authority. All those around them and the people that work for this person would point to that particular person and say, that is the leader. Okay? Now, that is an environment that we are going to be moving away from as we move further and further into managing and leading high technology teams. And the reason for that is, if we take a look at the description of a team, it's a small group of complementary skills committed to the common purpose, performance goals, and working approach. So teams are made up of small groups, and there's different definitions for groups, but groups become teams through disciplined actions. Okay? Teams are becoming more centralized to high-performing organizations. In fact, we really want to focus on trying to create what we refer to as high-performing teams. And we'll talk about that later in this session. We'll actually have a little bit of a description of that. And one of the things you're going to notice is that there's this shift or movement away from the philosophy that knowledge is found only in a select group of people or in one specific person. And there's a shift over towards collective knowledge, looking at what synergy creates when you start to have collaboration, when we start to look at the notion of using knowledge in a distributed way throughout the organization, how relevant that is for us. So those become very, very important concepts. Now, what we'd like to do is we'd like to explore the leaderful leadership concept for you, and we'll talk about the difference between those. So we've already elaborated for you what it looks like in a traditional environment, what that traditional leadership role may look like. Now we're going to talk about a leaderful leadership environment, and this is the one we want to have you learn this new philosophy so that you can start to embrace this and become a leaderful leader. So a leaderful leader or leadership in this environment is concurrent. That means that in this community or group or team, you can have more than one leader at a time. And that these leaders are willing and naturally share the leadership role. Sometimes it's necessary for somebody to step forward and say, I can take this. I have the skill set here. It's better for me to take the leadership role here and move forward, and that other leader steps back. That understanding that you can move forward and move backward really increases the power of a team. In addition to that, leaders perform a variety of responsibilities in the community group or team. So they can be technical leaders, and they can be leaders of people, they could be test leaders, they could be leaders that step forward at a specific point in a project or a program, and then at another point step back and assume another role, and that role could be a technical role. And you're going to find that in high technology teams and high technology companies, that is very, very traditional. It's very necessary. And in that environment, it's pointless, as we say here, to insist on only having one leader. You need to have multiple leaders. You need to have that ability to be able to reach out and use multiple people as different resources. And many times we refer to them as SMEs, subject matter experts, people that have got specific skill sets that are necessary for a high technology environment. The other thing we're going to talk about is that leaderful leadership from the concept of being collective. So there's many people in this group or this team, and many of them may operate as leaders at different times. So there's this collective knowledge base that we have. The community or group does not just look at one person or one individual to create actions or decisions. There's a level of collaboration where people are trusted to the point where we've allowed them to have the authority to make decisions for themselves, for their groups, for their areas. That's being collective. And these decisions are made by whoever has the relevant responsibility. If I have a better level of understanding of what's going on in a specific situation, then it may make more sense for leadership to emerge from me or from anyone in this environment. The next thing we're going to talk about, or the third thing, will be that leadership is collaborative in this leaderful leadership environment. All members may be in control of and may speak for the entire community or group or team. I can step forward and say, I represent the team, I represent the group, and that what I'm saying is a representation of what we all think. This is a very different environment than that traditional environment. Okay? So in this collaborative environment, you may advocate a point of view that you believe can contribute to what we refer to as the common good of the community, of practice, of the community, the group, or the team. We still remain sensitive to all the different views of all the different people, but we do have a common view. We understand our viewpoints. We consider all the viewpoints, but we do merge forward with what we refer to as a collective view. We seek to engage in public dialogue, which means we're very open. We have no problem openly expressing our beliefs and our values. We don't hide those. If we believe that people are the most important, I'll call it, relationship that we have within our organization, then we state that. We overtly come out and tell people that. And the other piece of this, by being collaborative, is that we listen to others. We're very open to listening to everyone, to everything. Your stakeholders, your customers, your clients, the other people that are on your team. Everyone around you is open to listening and hearing, not only listening, but hearing what other people are saying. The next piece we want to talk about, the fourth and last one, is that leadership is compassionate. So that discompassionate environment where it didn't matter is not one of the ones in a leaderful leadership environment. We demonstrate compassion to the extent of an open commitment to preserving the dignity of others. Everyone's views are considered before making a decision. It's that collaborative environment, that compassionate environment. We look at driving to consensus, and consensus means that I don't necessarily have to agree, but I will go along with this decision, that we've talked about it to where everyone understands the different points of view, and that those create this environment for us where everyone is valued. Everyone on the team is valued. Everyone in the group is valued, no matter what their background is, no matter what their social standing is. So somebody from manufacturing and somebody from engineering are equal. Somebody from quality is equal in this environment. It isn't that one person's background makes them more important than others, and that the leaders in these type of environments, these compassionate environments, recognize that the values are interconnected with leadership, that their values, what they demonstrate from a moralistic standpoint, is connected. All of their views are connected, and that no higher value than what we refer to as democratic participation. Everyone handles problems when they arise. We allow them to do that on their own. If they need help, they will come ask for it. They are in an environment that is very, very compassionate and collaborative. So when we look at this environment that we're talking about, you know, a real team is never leaderless. You never don't have a leader. Leadership is drawn at each member at different times in many different ways. And by that I mean depending on where you are in a project, in a program, in the organization, in that team, in that group, you may be asked to step forward as a leader at a certain point and help us move across the finish line, help us move forward in what we refer to as a positive direction. The leader's responsibility falls naturally on the shoulders of whichever member has the best knowledge at a certain point in time. That is just the naturalness of being in a leaderful leadership environment. And the view that many people within the group might be operating as leaders is just natural. That's part of what happens. Decisions are made by whoever has the best understanding or the relevant information or responsibility. That is what's natural about this leaderful leadership environment that we're talking about. So let's just do a quick summary here. Leaderful leadership is not dependent on any one member of the team or the group. It's based on everyone. Leadership may emerge from multiple members at any time, and they will work collaboratively together to help get the best solutions out. Leaderful leaders are sensitive to all the viewpoints and feelings of others. The stakeholders in the projects or programs, the people that work on the floor, the people that do any job that they're connected to or associated with. Leaderful leaders emerge in an honest and open communication forum. You're allowed to tell people what's going on. How are things going on? What's happening around us? What do we need to be concerned about? Those are shared on a regular basis. Leaderful leaders know that leadership is a collective property, not a sanctuary for just one person, or the most important person in what's referred to as the organization. And then leaderful leaders are willing to assume leadership in the moment. They'll step forward and say, hey, I think I've got it at this point. It makes more sense for me to do it, and then I'll hand it back over to someone else. That's what we're referring to from a leaderful leadership perspective. So I've got a series of questions for you here if we wanted to have a discussion. As a leader, why is it important for you to be leaderful? I want you to think about that. I want you to reflect upon that as just for a moment. Why would it be important for you in your organization where you're at right now, in your group or your team, to be leaderful? What political leader do you think is leaderful and why? Because there's a lot of different leadership models out there right now, but think of a political leader that you think is leaderful, demonstrates those 4 C's and why. Now let's take a look at a situation at so is a doctor at a hospital leaderful, or does it depend on the situation? So is it situational? Think about that environment for a doctor where an emergency happens. Is that a different situation than when you just come to visit them in a doctor's office? Okay. Another example, is a police officer leaderful when they're doing their job? I want you to think about that. Respond to that. And then the final thing I want you to think about is, what do you think is the most important thing about being leaderful? What is it that you bring as a leaderful leader that other people don't? Okay? Now, all members of the team, not just the designated leader, are in control and may speak for the entire organization in this leaderful environment that we're talking about. And all members may advocate a point of view, and they believe that they can contribute to the common good of the community. Each member of the organization is valued regardless of the background or social standings. And once again, team members' views are considered before making a decision. We get all of that information. Those are the criteria for us to have a leaderful leadership type of organization. So now I've got a quiz for you, and I need you to answer this. And some of these questions are going to go one way, and some of them are going to go another. So if I demand control, am I leaderful? That would be question 1. Question 2, if I tell people to shut up and do what I say, am I leaderful? Question 3, if I share control of the leadership role with the others, am I leaderful? Question 4, if I ask for everyone's opinion before we make a decision, am I leaderful? Question 5, if I value everyone on my team or in my group, no matter what their background or social standing, am I leaderful? And then the final question I have for you, question 6, is if I tell people that my values are more important than your values, am I leaderful? Well, listen, we've gone ahead and gone through the material on leaderful leadership. I look forward to hearing your dialogue or any of the questions that you may have associated with this. Remember, to be a leaderful leader means that you want to help move your organization forward in a positive direction. And that ultimately is one of the most important things that we need as we move forward in a leadership and management role working with high technology teams. Have a great week. Goodbye.